On today's episode, I have an incredible conversation with Audrey Saccone. Audrey is the CEO of Audrey Digital. She is an experienced marketer and technologist who has served dozens of successful digital businesses. And by the way, these are people and brands that you know, that you love, and that you buy from. Following about 5.5 years in the nonprofit sector, Audrey moved into the online marketing space, where she has worked for leaders like Forleo and Sophia Amoruso. Today, Audrey and her team of developers and technologists support your favorite e-commerce and digital businesses and ensure that their marketing and digital operations are always operating at peak performance levels. Now, in today's conversation, Audrey and I get really deep and into the nitty-gritty of what it's like to be both a high-achieving, ambitious CEO who is responsible for a team and for their livelihoods and for their futures, and also somebody who is committed to being an incredible service provider and a professional for other CEOs. And wearing those two hats, as Audrey very transparently and honestly shares in our conversation today, can be both beautiful and really burdensome. And I especially appreciated that Audrey shared the transition that she and her team have been going through over the recent months. She's telling you where she's been, where she is now, and where she and the team hope to go. But she's very much still in that transition. And I don't know that all CEOs would really share as honestly as she does. I am so delighted to bring you this conversation. I found it personally impactful. I found it deep and rich and really transformative. But as you hear, we also enjoy some laughs over our musical theater backgrounds, being in orchestra as young kids, and what that felt like to be a performer who moved into a very tech-heavy and marketing-heavy career. So I hope that you enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed speaking with Audrey Saccone. Welcome, Audrey. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have really been looking forward to this conversation. In fact, I probably have shared this with you, but every time your face comes up in my feed, anytime I think about your name, I smile for two very good reasons. The first one is that my oldest daughter is named Audrey. So there's just like an immediate kind of warm feeling that I have when I see you and I think of my firstborn. And the other is that I feel such a kindred spirit with you because from the outside looking in, I feel like you have been able to create this booming, profitable, impact forward business of which you are the CEO. But you're also really kind of the techspert behind the scenes for other CEOs. And I find that that's a little bit different than the traditional CEO story. Do you think of yourself as CEO first or client provider first?
Just right off the bat with a big question. I think for the beginning of my business, very much client forward, but I have very intentionally spent the last, I'd say 9 to 12 months of switching as much into CEO mode as possible because I don't have to be the operator all the time, which is so hard to me because I think for those of us who are high achievers and who've been successful, it can be very hard to relinquish that control and, the glory and the ego that goes along with it. But the business can't thrive and grow if I'm doing all the time. I have to lead.
Yeah, that really resonates with me because I used to really just say I'm a done-for-you service provider. And I work with incredible high-achieving CEOs, 7, 8, 9-figure plus CEOs. And so I always felt like, okay, well, that really helps people understand the breadth of what I do. But, at the heart of it, I still often feel like a nerd and proudly. I love being in the weeds. I love being the one that kind of comes in and controls the chaos. And so as you have been making that shift over these last few months, is there anything that has come up for you from a mindset perspective? Did this come really naturally, or have there been things that you've been kind of working over your inner dialogue?
Yeah, I think it's been really challenging at times for me. I started my career in a rather low stakes environment, and I had a lot of safety and room to fail. And with our clients that we work with, and because the team is so small and we're working with people who have very high expectations, we don't have that same safety. So it's been tough to really like maintain that high quality while training team members, having them learn and grow. And some of them don't have the same, none of them have the same experience, obviously, but they don't have even similar experiences. They're excellent at what they do, but sometimes they're doing something for the first time, or they haven't done something in 6 months and they don't have that same muscle memory that I do to fall back on. So, it's really challenging in maintaining expectations with the client and making sure we have the proper QA processes in place so that when things do go wrong, we catch it first and we're able to fix it and nobody knows about it.
It's funny that you say that, because I was recently talking with a client and I was handing off some of the tasks and the SOPs. And then I said, but don't worry, I've highlighted all of the things that could break. And the good news is it's a very small amount of things. But then I realized that confidence came from breaking everything, right? Like I have crashed websites, I have upgraded plugins, I have added apps, I have sent emails thinking it was to a small segment. And I, like you, Audrey, I'm like, very, very detail oriented. I check things anytime I have to send an email to, let's say, over 100 people. And like you, I have worked with much larger email lists, much more high stakes initiatives. But if it's over 100, I am still going to check it 10 times. I'm going to leave my desk and come back and make sure that it actually is correct. All of that happens. So when you are working with a team, as a lot of our listeners are either agency owners or are trying to transition out of that one-to-one done for you kind of upper limit work, how have you been able to build a team and really not just build, but train and coach them so that you feel like, wow, they're totally in their zone of genius and I can trust them?
Oh, it's taken a lot of time. Part of it is, hiring people I really, really trust. One of my team members has been with me since the beginning of my business, and she's someone I've known for a very long time. And I hired her for her adaptability. I didn't hire her because she knew how to do anything. She knew how to do none of the things that we did. But I knew she was a fast learner. I knew she had good technical instincts, and I knew she could figure things out. And because of that, I trusted her to do that. And I gave her the time and space to do that. So something that might take me 10 minutes because I've done it 100 times and for years might take her an hour the first time. And then it takes 45 minutes, and then it takes 30 minutes. And then eventually it takes 10 minutes. And just knowing to build that in and be patient and graceful, which are not always my strengths, but things I'm always working on. That's kind of been the way to do it. And then also hiring people who are really good at what they do. We've transitioned over the past few months to really focus on development only. And while I've built a handful of sites myself and been involved in many, many builds, like I am on paper, I'm not a developer. I'm a marketer. I'm a strong technical marketer, and I understand code and I can write code and I can read code, but I don't do it every day, and I don't want to do it every day. So it's about hiring people who are excellent at it and trusting them to do things that I don't do that well. And actually for me, that's been very freeing because it lets me step out of the day-to-day, because I couldn't step into it if I wanted to, because I haven't done it in a long time.
Yeah, I totally get that. And it's funny because every once in a while, I will almost force myself to do, I call it undercover boss, but really what it is just testing myself and going in and making sure, do I still actually know how to deploy that email or to update that code? I love that you shared that. Okay, so we're talking about current day, Audrey, and all of the work that you have done and all the work that you're continuing to do. But I want to go back in time. Did little Audrey, 5th grade, 6th grade, say, I'm going to grow up and become what you are today? What were your dreams? What was your kind of highest aspiration when you were younger?
Oh, little 5th grade Audrey was either going to be like a Broadway star or a pop star. And there was kind of no other option for me. That I've always loved performing. I loved being on stage. That was where I wanted to go.
And so how did that personality. Tell me a little bit, I guess, about your origin story. What did you go to school for? Did you go to school? Did you come right out and get working? Talk me through those years.
I did go to school. I did go to school for music. I went to school initially for music education because for anybody who's listening who's interested in pursuing music, I think this has changed a little bit in the past 15 to 20 years. But for me, it was very much told, okay, you can perform and like learn how to perform professionally and struggle or be in the 1%, right? But mostly you'll struggle and, you know, be set up for potentially a lot of failure, or you can teach. And those are like the only two options. I was like, fine, I'll teach because I can get a teaching degree and still perform if I want to. And either way, I have a job to fall back on. And I go to school and I was in the education program and I just was like, I don't want to go to a classroom every single day. That sounds terrible for me. Listen, that's perfect for other people. But like the idea of being around children every day, doing the same thing every single day, I was like, I'm going to be bored out of my mind. And one of my professors was like, I think you should switch to the music business program, which I did. And the school that I went to has a really unique music business program. A lot of them are really structured around products or recording. And ours has that as well, but it also has a really strong arts administration piece of it. So really big in the nonprofit space and other organizations. And, you know, it was funny. It's like, to me, I was in the youth orchestra when I was in high school. I loved the local roadshow house that had all the Broadway productions coming in. And I never put two and two together that was a job for somebody to like manage those things. You know, it's like, oh, people just do this in their spare. Like, I don't know. I had no idea. And so I learned a lot about that. And I spent the first 5.5 years of my career at a nonprofit in the opera space. It's a service organization. So we are like an umbrella organization for all the opera companies in the United States, of which there are over 150. In case you would like a fun trivia fact about that, there are many of them. But I did marketing. I did front end web development. I did events. We had a huge annual conference every year. Like, I learned so much about how to do so many things. And that was honestly, I think, one of the best decisions I've ever made in my career because it set me up for my whole future.
Little Katy and little Audrey would have gotten along very, very well. So I was a first chair flautist. I went all the way through high school doing high school theater, musicals. I thought for sure I was dating myself a little bit, but I thought I was like coming up in the era of the Jessica Simpson, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, En Vogue, Janet Jackson.
Yeah.
They were my ladies. And I realized so quickly as I was coming into high school, number one, I didn't actually have the pure talent. And there was something about that actually was okay. I'm not a perfectionist, but I would say I'm very high achieving. And it's that. So for me to say, oh, I actually don't feel like I need to be the best at that, was sort of a sign that maybe that wasn't intended to be my calling. And then I had a very similar experience because I went to school for broadcast journalism and I thought that my career was going to, take me on air. I actually realized that the whole power structure and dynamic was behind the scenes. And so I moved into becoming a news producer, which, as you shared with your story, ultimately led me to build the website because nobody on the team knew how to do that, and launched the email newsletter because no one knew how to do that. And then I actually discovered that was not just more in demand. It was actually a better fit for all of my skills. But it's always interesting for me to hear, like, what was this arc? You've actually provided me with a perfect segue, though, because I know that you are still a musical theater fan. I can see that you are constantly playbills. I love this, by the way. My parents met in a drama class in California a long, long time ago. I won't date them, but I've already dated myself. And they still are active in community theater and really encourage that in me. So even myself, my kids, we are very into musical theater. Is there a particular play or musical theater production that you have loved and you'd love to see again and again and again?
Oh my God. I mean, most of them. Like, I could just... good, bad, ugly, beautiful, everything in between. Like, I will go see them. I think in terms of what's running right now, I saw Shucked. I've seen Shucked twice in the past month and it's excellent. It's very funny. So if that ever tours in your in your hometown, definitely go see it. It is just hilarious. But I mean, I love a good ensemble focused show. I love a comedy. I don't think there's enough comedy, especially comedy musicals. But while I believe in the fact that theater should inspire you and tell a story, I also believe that theater should entertain you, and it should be a form of escapism. And you should just be able to go and sit in a room for 3 hours and not have your phone on. I think even when we go to the movies, I mean, I don't really go to the movie theater, but like when you watch a movie at home or you have your phone, you have your laptop, like theater is just an experience where you're all there together and you can just be in the moment and be present and just enjoy.
I love that. I was very, very pregnant with my second daughter, and I attended an Idina Menzel concert, and my daughter basically came out of the womb singing. So I really wonder if there was something in the atmosphere that day and of course she's a huge Wicked fan. She's a huge Frozen fan, obviously, but so I love that. Okay. So we talked about your team. We talked about younger Audrey. Talk to me a little bit about your personal inner circle. So I'm not just talking about your team members who maybe sometimes feel like family and feel close. Where do you go when you need to bounce ideas off of other people? You need to vent. You need perspective outside of work. What is it? A large circle, small circle? What does that look like for you?
I think it's a pretty small circle. I have a group of 5 other women that I put together as just like a peer mastermind kind of group that has been such a lifesaver this past year, I think, for all of us. We're all similarly sized businesses. We all have teams, small teams, but it's still team. And I think this size of business, we haven't hit the $1 million annual mark yet. And this point, especially as an agency owner, economies of scale are not in your favor yet. And I think this is one of the most challenging places to be. So that's been so valuable for all of us to say, I'm having this problem with this team member. I'm having this problem with cash flow. I'm having this problem with clients or whatever. And I think all of us at some point have been like, do I burn it down to the ground? I think all of us at some point in the past 6 months, some of us more than one time, And so I think to have that space of other women who are at the same stage, who get it, and we can just candidly have those conversations has just, makes you feel so much less alone, because you can't share that with your team, because you don't want them to worry about their jobs or the business, so to just have that, I think that's been, I think, the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I started this podcast, and the reason I called it Hard Cost, because, I have had similar experiences to what you just shared, working in upper level leadership for a 9-figure company, running my own multiple 6-figure, 7-figure company, working with those incredible CEOs. And of course, all of these things are going well, right? But the crown is still really heavy. Sometimes you are still thinking, how am I going to make payroll? How do I address this unhappy client? How do I deal with the fact that this product wasn't, in inventory? All of these things that come up. And I love that you just shared that, because there is something really lonely and isolating, which is, I often find myself like pulling back that language, because for someone who is maybe startup land or is really underwater, like they don't want to hear somebody who has a successful, and I'm using air quotes for anyone who's not watching the video. So I love that you shared that. What have been the times in this most recent journey where the crown has felt the heaviest? What kind of decisions have you had to make, or hard conversations that have really challenged you as a CEO?
We changed our entire business model a couple months ago. So we went from being a full service marketing agency. I had creatives on my team. This time last year, I had 6 or 7 full-time team members, and, that business just honestly those services weren't profitable for me at all. And it was really, really challenging. Resourcing was very uneven from project to project. Some people needed a lot of copies, some people needed a lot of designs, and my team was tired. My team was stressed because they would have a really busy week and then they have a really empty week. And like, how do you prepare for that?
Yeah.
You know, and we can do as much planning on our end as possible, but sometimes those weeks are just unavoidable. And so I made the decision to cut all of those services and just focus on web, which meant, you know, letting go of some team members and letting go of almost our entire roster of clients and starting from scratch. And it's been honestly, it's been a really challenging couple of months. It's been really exciting. I love our new clients. The team is much happier and much less stressed. And, you know, but we're working to really rebuild for a thing that we were kind of known for, but not really. And also in a new industry, we were really in the online course and membership space. And now we're really focused on e-commerce because I personally feel the course and membership space has gotten a little too volatile for my comfort level to hang my hat on just that industry. And I wanted to focus somewhere that I know there is need for, and there will be need for a long period of time.
Yeah, it sounds to me from the outside looking in and having had the pleasure of watching you through some of this transition, you know, what you've shared publicly is that, you know, I think many of the CEOs that we look up to or that have provided some kind of roadmap or been role models in some way, it turns out in hindsight that they really were able to look in their crystal ball and say, I see where things are going to be in 12 months and I need to pivot now. But the 12 months in between, especially if you haven't
so hard
banked a ton of capital or aren't taking on a lot of investment money or private capital, I love that you are building in public in a sense, or to, you know, the amount that you feel is fair to your clients and to your team. But I really love that you shared that, Audrey. And I truly cannot wait to see what things are like for you and your team and your clients 6 months from now. Because
oh my God, me too.
The future is so amazing in terms of Shopify development and D2C and e-commerce and all of this. So I'm just, not that you needed an extra fan, but just know that you have one. And I spend a lot of time trying to read the tea leaves as we all do. And I have the benefit of it not impacting my particular business line. But totally. I will just tell you that when I look at the future of AI and D2C and all of these, like, you know, fulfillment centers, it seems to me like you have really bet on the right horse, and I'm delighted for you and your team. But I will be keeping you in my thoughts because I know these pivots are often painful and exciting at the same time.
Things that, you know, and it's really hard. And, you know, I'd say part of the other realization we came to is I really sat down and identified who I want to keep working with in terms of clients. And for as much love and respect and admiration I have for people in the course membership space, I'm sure many of whom might be listening to this podcast, is, you know, the CEOs over there tend to be a little bit less experienced and, you know, don't necessarily understand how to work with an agency. And that's totally fine. But I didn't have the bandwidth to teach them that. It's something I talk about with my friends a lot of the time is when, you know, we'll get feedback from a client of like, why can't you respond right away? Why can't you be like this? And like, those are people who've only worked with employees and don't understand that an agency or even a contractor, they're not an employee, and they'll get frustrated with us. You know, why don't you reply? It's like, you're not our only client. This is not the most important thing that we're dealing with. Like, we have to measure that. And now we're working with clients who either they're a little bit more experienced and or we're actually working with their teams who are experienced. And for me, I love not working with the CEOs all the time because the CEOs, and I'm saying this as a CEO who loves and cares very much about my business and my team, you know, it's so much more personal for them. Whereas an employee who you're working with, they're there to do a job. And it's just a much healthier relationship, in my opinion, for just the way we were working with people.
Yeah. And what I find too is that many of the CEOs that you're talking about, you know, their highest value to the marketplace and to their team is to really stay in visionary role, right? Anytime they're pulled into the details, not only is their light and their fire really dimmed and dulled, but they actually make a mess. There's a mentor that I had who used to talk about that type of CEO as being an arsonist. If they're having to get pulled back into the details, then they're naturally going to start setting fires, and they're going to start, stopping projects at the 90% mark. And so I agree with you, but I think, and I'm just coming like you, sort of, I have my CEO hat as somebody who's running a business and working with a team, and yet still providing a service for other CEOs. That's why at the beginning of our conversation, I mentioned I love this overlap in our approach. But you do sort of have to say, hey, if I'm going to do the best work for you, I actually need you to not be a part of it. You need to trust me. You need to trust your team. You need to trust the process. And that can, I think, be a difficult conversation. So I love that you're navigating it too. So when you talk about some of these challenging challenging days, but also really the opportunities that you see, I fall back on a lot of mantras or a lot of sayings, quotes, things that really just kind of become my North Star or help me get back in alignment when I feel like something's out. Is there anything like that, a quote, a mantra, a saying, anything like that you come back to that helps guide you?
I mean, I think one of the things I really think about is, everything's going to work out the way it's supposed to. And to date, everything has worked out the way it was supposed to. Even if it sucked in the moment, everything in hindsight that has happened to me has been right for whatever reason. And holding on to that has been really wonderful. But I also I take a lot of walks. I eat a lot of ice cream. I read a lot of books, and not personal. I can't read any more personal development. I've read so many. I'm burnt out on them, but novels, I read novels. I watch trash TV, and I try to have separation from the business.
Audrey. I'm fully on book talk. I'm hey, give me some chili peppers. That is what I need. Yeah. I don't need to read another email marketing book. Take me out.
Yes. 1,000%.
Okay, so I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a lightning round. And I would love to know first, are you team iPhone, team Android, team iOS or Android?
iPhone.
Yeah. It's funny when I ask developers or people who have a development background, because more and more I'm hearing them go back to Android devices. And I think it's really just a code environment thing. But from a user experience, I'm with you. I think it's iOS all the way. I love that. Okay.
Especially as a marketer,
that's exactly
all the good apps are on iOS.
That's exactly right. I know. And again, who knows what will change here in the next 6 months, but I think Apple's got a pretty tight lockdown on that. And obviously Shopify, from your perspective, is developing some really exciting apps. So I'm going to be watching that space quite carefully. Yeah. Okay, social media platform. First of all, do you enjoy being on social media? And if so, or even if not, what is your favorite platform to share more business, but also personal content?
In terms of creating content, Instagram. In terms of consuming content, either Instagram or TikTok. But I honestly, I keep deleting. I'm a 2-phone girly. So I have a work phone and I have a personal phone. It is one of the best things I've done for my mental health. And so I have all the social accounts on my work phone, but I pretty often delete them off of my personal phone because I will just scroll forever. And it's just not good for me. So I try to I use it for work and for the business, and that's it.
I am going to admit that I never even thought about having separate phones. Back in the day, I had a phone and a pager, and the pager, again, talk about dating myself, the pager was really where anything important went for work. And my phone was, but that's really the last time I even conceptualized separating work and real life. You just unlocked a major
oh my God.
Up level.
It is. And I think especially dealing with some higher profile clients, they love to text. These people love to do business over it. I despise it, but some people that's just how they operate. And this lets me, I keep the phone in my office, or my home office. It stays in my work bag when I get home, and I'll deal with it in the morning.
Okay, truly, that might have been the most important thing for me personally, because I too. It is funny. There's like an inverse. The higher up the client gets, the more they just want to text you. Oh, I'm just going to text you that photo. I'm just going to, and there's only so much you can say when you're operating at that level. So that makes me feel better. Okay, so you're given a 3-month sabbatical from work, and there are no negative impacts, no impact on cash flow. The business keeps running. All of these things. Where do you go? Who are you with? What are you doing?
I'm going to Italy. I'm bringing my mom and my sister, and we're going to make pasta for 3 months.
Oh my gosh. So instead of eat, pray, love, it's just eat, eat, eat.
It's just eat. Yeah.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I might have to tuck myself in your suitcase if you take that trip.
Oh, please, listen, we'll be there for 3 months. So, you come whenever you want.
I had the pleasure of spending one day in Venice, one day in Rome, one day in Florence, many, many, many years ago, and it is on my must see again list. So yeah, I'm gonna hop onto that trip with you. It sounds amazing.
Yes.
Talk to me about your biggest fear, and I'm going to let you go wherever you want. An actual existential fear, a silly fear. Tell me what would keep you up at night or terrify you.
The thing that actually keeps me up at night is, I think my biggest fear is like having to let go of the team. I think that is my biggest fear, and letting down my team. Yeah, not only the clients. The clients, fine, they'll live, but my team, they're everything to me.
Yeah. I think that is probably the number one hard cost that somebody who has not yet leveled up to being a CEO where people's livelihoods depend on it. It is an all consuming opportunity, but also responsibility. And yeah, I know you're not the only one that takes that seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll let you go on one later note. Do you drink coffee? And if so, what is your coffee order?
I drink coffee all day through an IV if I could. Iced coffee all year round. Either like an iced cold brew, but I like to kind of do like a concentrated cold brew. So it's almost like an espresso. And I've been doing my own shaken like cold brew or shaken espresso every morning with like the brown sugar. But like actual brown sugar, not the syrup. Like if you like shake it with some ice, it just dissolves and it gets all frothy and delicious. And then I just top it with a bunch of oat milk. And I've got one sitting on my desk right now. It's very sweaty.
Gosh. That sounds so refreshing and so delicious. I grew up in Boston, and so Dunkin' Donuts was really the only coffee in town. And then when I got older and kind of expanded my palate, the world of caffeine intake really opened up. But that, what you just described, the brown sugar, oat milk, shaken,
so good.
Caramel, all of that, that's my favorite. So that's a really good tip. And so the next time that you and I are able to see each other in person, coffee's on me, and we will definitely.
Sounds great.
Just coffee's on me, but all day. We'll just keep it flowing.
Amazing.
We'll talking about business. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you taking the time, and I truly cannot wait to see what is next for you.
Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure.
Isn't it funny how some CEOs will admit to drinking caffeine and coffee all day long, and some have completely sworn off coffee altogether? I'm finding in these conversations that there's not much of a middle ground. There are very few CEOs that I've had the pleasure of speaking to who say, oh yeah, I start my day with 1 cup of coffee and that's all I need. So I hope that in addition to all of the deep work that I had in terms of the conversation with Audrey and all the other CEOs on the Hard Cost podcast, I hope that you have also enjoyed learning a little bit more about the people behind the brand, because it has really been a pleasure for me to bring these stories for you. If you would like to learn more about Audrey Saccone, and I know that you do, first, you can visit her website, audreydigital.co. audreydigital.co has more information about their services, their portfolio, how they can work with you, and all sorts of other incredibly helpful information. You can also find links to their social platforms, and on Instagram, they're at Audrey Digital. And again, you can learn more about their Shopify development work and a lot more tips in terms of online marketing and audience growth. Thank you as always for listening, and I can't wait to join you for the next episode of Hard Costs.